When 3 ribboned chairs sat empty at the front of my wedding, I told myself love would fill the gaps. Then, my best friend pressed a phone into my frosting sticky hands, and there they were, my parents and sister, clinking champagne glasses on a Caribbean deck at the exact moment I said I do. The timestamp wasn't just proof, it was a verdict. By the next sunrise, a stranger's message would expose an $8,000 withdrawal from the account my grandfather built for me. And that was only the first thread. Pull one lie, and the entire family tapestry comes apart. I used to think being forgotten was just part of my fate. At my high school graduation, I scanned the bleachers for my parents, clutching my diploma with trembling hands, only to realize the seats I'd saved with little paper reserved signs were still empty when my name was called. My father later told me traffic was bad. My mother said Paige's recital couldn't be missed. Years later, when I was promoted at work and the company hosted a small dinner to celebrate, I remember walking into the restaurant alone, rehearsing how I would explain their absence. They never showed. I told myself over and over that they loved me, just differently. I was the child who understood, the child who forgave. But weddings, I believed, were sacred. If there was ever a day when my family would appear, proud and present, it had to be this one. I clung to that fragile hope with the desperation of someone who had spent a lifetime settling for scraps of affection. In the weeks leading up to the ceremony, every time my mother's voice turned distant on the phone, every time my father avoided my texts, I reminded myself, they'll come. They have to come. The morning of my wedding was as clear and crisp as the apple-scented Octobers of my childhood. Light filtered through the chapel windows like liquid gold, and my friends bustled around me with laughter, curling irons and coffee cups. Noah's sisters brought champagne, my maid of honor Tessa pinned my veil with steady hands, and his mother, Patricia, fastened my grandmother's pearls around my neck. For the first time, I felt surrounded by warmth that didn't demand apology. And still, my eyes kept drifting toward the entrance, as if expecting to see my mother walk in carrying an overnight bag, her voice soft with last-minute excuses. When the wedding coordinator asked, "Do you want to reserve seats for your parents?" Sometimes people change their minds last minute. My chest tightened. I hesitated just long enough to meet Noah's gaze across the rehearsal hall. His nod was small, steady, the kind of assurance that said, "I'll stand with you either way." "Yes," I said. 3 seats. Front row, left side. The chairs were draped in ivory ribbon, their polished wooden frames gleaming in the candlelight. Place cards spelled out Carol Morgan, Dennis Morgan, Paige Morgan. I studied those names as if by sheer will I could conjure the people behind them. They looked so official, so permanent, as though my family's presence was already woven into the ceremony. At 3:45, the chapel doors opened and the world seemed to still. Music swelled, and every guest rose to their feet. Tom, Noah's uncle, offered me his arm. He was kind, but not the man I had once imagined would walk me down the aisle. My heart pounded against the bodice of my dress as the first notes of the processional filled the air. Step by step, I moved forward. The rows of smiling faces blurred, and all I could see was the altar where Noah waited, tears already streaking his cheeks. His hand clutched over his chest as if holding his heart in place. My chest ached with a strange blend of joy and grief. Joy for the man who had chosen me every day for 4 years, grief for the family who couldn't choose me even once. When I glanced toward the front row, my breath caught. The 3 chairs glowed in the soft light, their white ribbons tied in neat bows, untouched. The cards with my parents' and sisters' names sat like tiny accusations. The emptiness screamed louder than any whisper, louder than the music itself. I forced myself forward, eyes locking with Noah's. The aisle stretched long and narrow, and with each step I felt as though I were balancing between 2 worlds. The one where I kept hoping for their faces to appear at the last second, and the one where I finally accepted they never would. By the time I reached Noah, my decision was clear. I could either keep waiting for them to show up, or I could take Noah's hands and step into a life where showing up actually meant something. "Where else would I be?" I whispered when he leaned in, trembling with relief. The officiant began, Voices faded, and all I could hear was the silent echo of those 3 empty chairs. The reception glowed with laughter and clinking glasses, the kind of celebration I had always imagined for myself. For a brief moment, I almost believed joy could patch over the ache of the empty chairs I'd seen during the ceremony. Guests toasted, children twirled on the dance floor, and Noah looked at me as though I were the only person in the room. I let myself exhale, trying to lean into the happiness pressing at the edges of my grief. Then Tessa's hand touched my arm. Her face carried a strange tightness, a hesitation I knew too well from years of people bracing to deliver bad news. "Ava," she whispered, slipping Noah's phone into my hand. "You should see this before anyone else shows you." My fingers were still sticky with frosting when I swiped the screen. The image that filled it knocked the air out of me. My parents and Paige, dressed in matching Morgan Family Reunion 2024 shirts, raising champagne flutes against a backdrop of turquoise water. The timestamp was exact, 4 p.m., the same moment I had walked down the aisle in my cream-colored dress. The floor seemed to tilt. My vision blurred as I scrolled, heart hammering. More photos appeared, each more devastating than the last. My uncles and aunts clustered together in sun hats, my cousins laughing at a buffet table, even distant relatives I'd been told were too ill or too busy to make the trip to my wedding. They weren't sick, they weren't busy. They were there, all of them, on that ship, smiling as if their joy required my absence. It wasn't just that my parents hadn't shown up, it was that the entire family had chosen a Caribbean deck over my vows. Twist after twist revealed itself in each swipe, the excuses, the cancellations, the silences that had left me clinging to scraps of hope. They had been lies, all of them. The music of my reception felt muffled, as though I were suddenly underwater. I handed the phone back to Tessa with trembling hands, muttering something I couldn't even remember. Then I turned and fled, my gown brushing against champagne-slick floors as I pushed through the crowd toward the bridal suite. Behind me, voices rose in laughter and music swelled, but inside me, everything went hollow. In the quiet of the suite, I collapsed into a chair, pulling the phone back toward me with the desperate obsession of someone searching for proof. I combed through every post, every tag. There was Paige in a sundress I'd never seen before, posing by a railing. There was my father playing shuffleboard, his Hawaiian shirt still carrying the creases of a fresh purchase. My mother, laughing at a champagne brunch, her face lit with the kind of joy she hadn't spared for me in years. And then the worst image, a group photo in the ship's ballroom, everyone dressed in white, glasses raised mid-toast. The caption read, "To family, the ones who matter most always find a way to be together." The words burned into me. Family, the ones who matter most. Their definition of family clearly didn't include me. A knock sounded on the door, gentle. "Ava?" Noah's voice drifted through. I couldn't answer at first. My throat had locked. He stepped in anyway, carrying a slice of cake, his tie loosened, his face flushed from dancing. His smile faltered when he saw me curled around the phone like it was evidence in a trial. "They're all there," I whispered, showing him the screen. My voice was flat, emptied of surprise. Not just Mom and Dad, everyone. Noah sat beside me, his warmth steady against my trembling body. He scrolled through the photos, jaw tightening with each swipe. "They planned this for months," he said quietly. "While you were mailing invitations, while you were begging them to come, they already knew." I pressed my hands over my face. "It's not just that they didn't come. It's that they made sure I saw it. Publicly, like proof that I don't matter." Noah pulled me against him, his voice fierce but gentle. "You matter more than they'll ever admit. You are not the one broken here. They are. And you don't have to keep carrying their cruelty." But sitting in that bridal suite, surrounded by bouquets and the muffled laughter of my reception downstairs, I understood a truth I had always tried to ignore. My family hadn't simply forgotten me. They had chosen, deliberately and together, to erase me. And this time, there was no pretending otherwise. That night should have been about champagne toasts and tangled sheets, about the kind of intimacy you only get on the first night of marriage. Instead, as Noah and I collapsed into our hotel bed, still half-dressed from the reception, my phone buzzed with a message that yanked me back into the storm. The sender was Deborah, one of my mother's longtime friends. I barely remembered her, but her words carved into me like ice. Ava, I'm so sorry. I thought you should know. Your father withdrew $8,000 from your grandfather's account last month for that cruise. That money wasn't his. My breath caught. My grandfather's account? For a moment, the name alone felt like a blessing I hadn't heard in years. Grandpa Walter had been the only one who consistently showed up for me. Birthdays, recitals, late-night calls when I cried at college. He never failed. When he died 2 years ago, I assumed whatever he left behind had gone straight to my parents. They never mentioned an account with my name on it. I sat up, fingers trembling. Noah, I whispered, handing him the phone. His brow furrowed as he read. Then he turned to me with eyes that flashed with protective anger. We need to check this right now. I don't even know how, I admitted. I had never touched that account. But with Noah guiding me, I pulled out my laptop, reset the password with my social security number, and waited as the screen loaded. My stomach twisted with nausea as if some part of me already knew what I was about to see. There it was, my name, listed as a secondary account holder. The balance made my pulse race, not because it was large, but because it was so much less than it should have been. $18,141 stared back at me in cold black numbers. I clicked through the transaction history, and that's when the world dropped out from under me. Line after line of withdrawals scrolled down the screen like a grotesque grocery list of betrayal. 6 months ago, $5,000 transfer. Same week, Paige posted photos of her new car with the caption, "Finally got my dream ride." Last year, $3,500 withdrawal labeled furnishings. The same month, my mother bragged about redecorating the living room. And just yesterday, $67 for a ship Wi-Fi package. I felt bile rise in my throat. They had literally used my inheritance to pay for internet access so they could post photos of their vacation while I said my vows. Each number pulsed like a bruise, proof that this wasn't a one-time mistake. It was systematic, planned, for months, maybe years. Noah leaned over my shoulder, his hand tightening on mine. This wasn't just $8,000, Ava. Look at the totals. I scrolled further, the weight pressing harder with each line. $12,000 here, $40,200 there. The figures added up with sickening speed, and before I could even calculate, I realized the withdrawals weren't just in the tens of thousands. They were nearing 6 figures. Twist the knife. Why don't you? I muttered bitterly, but my voice shook. All those times they told me they couldn't afford to come to my birthday dinners, that they had bills piling up. They were spending my money the whole time. Noah's jaw tightened. This is theft. Pure and simple. The word made my stomach lurch. Theft. Against anyone else, it would have been straightforward. But these weren't strangers. These were the people who raised me, who taught me to say please and thank you, who told me family was everything. And they had robbed me, openly, without a shred of shame. I clicked back to the balance, staring at the numbers until they blurred. It should be so much more, I whispered. He saved his whole life for me. I can feel it. This isn't just a few thousand missing. It's years. Noah's voice was steady, but his hand was trembling. Then we find out how much, Ava. We don't stop here. The laptop screen glowed in the dim hotel room, harsh and unflinching. Somewhere down the hall, another wedding party guest laughed, the sound carefree and oblivious. I sat there on the edge of the bed in my wedding dress, mascara smudged and pearls still at my throat, staring at the receipts of my family's betrayal. And for the first time, I realized the 3 empty chairs at my wedding hadn't just been symbols of absence. They had been placeholders for the truth. They were never really mine to begin with. By morning, my phone had become a weapon against me. Notifications piled up like debris after a storm, each message another shard aimed straight at my chest. First came one from my mother. Ava, don't be dramatic. You know how things are. We needed this trip for our mental health. You'll understand one day. Then Paige chimed in, her tone even more cutting. Sorry, sis. Not everything is about you. We all needed a break. Stop making it such a big deal. I stared at their words until the letters blurred. Dramatic, selfish, attention-seeking. They were the same accusations they'd always hurled at me when I asked for even the smallest piece of their presents. It wasn't enough that they had stolen my wedding day, or my grandfather's savings. They needed to make me believe I was the problem, too. Noah sat across from me at the hotel desk, jaw tight as he read over my shoulder. "They're gaslighting you," he said. "Classic. They steal from you, abandon you, and then blame you for reacting." His anger burned on my behalf, but all I felt was hollow. I opened Facebook, my fingers hovering before typing slowly, deliberately. "To those who showed up yesterday, thank you. To those who didn't, your absence spoke louder than words." Sometimes people give you the answer without realizing it. It wasn't bitter. It wasn't vengeful. It was simply the truth. And within minutes, friends and even distant acquaintances began liking and commenting. "We love you, Ava. You deserved better. We're proud to be there for you." The support felt like sunlight breaking through the cracks, though the shadows of my family's absence still loomed. Later that afternoon, as Noah and I were about to leave for the short drive to our honeymoon suite, the hotel clerk stopped us in the lobby. "Mrs. Bennett," he said hesitantly, "this was left for you at the front desk. The man said it was urgent." He handed me an envelope with my name written in my father's familiar block letters. My stomach dropped. With shaking hands, I broke the seal and unfolded the note. "Ava, stop this now before you ruin everything. You don't understand what you're dealing with. That money is complicated. Your grandfather's estate is complicated. If you pursue this, you'll destroy more than our relationship. You'll destroy his legacy. Do not involve lawyers. Do not escalate. We need to talk. Alone. No outsiders." "Dad?" I read it twice, 3 times. Each word dug deeper, not because of what was written, but because of what was missing. No apology, no love, no regret for missing my wedding, just threats dressed up as fatherly concern. Twist 3 slammed into me like a fresh wound. Maybe this wasn't just about an account or a few stolen checks. Maybe there was more, something larger they were hiding behind the curtain of complicated. I handed the letter to Noah. His eyes narrowed as he read, then he looked up at me. "This isn't just manipulation. He's afraid. That means there's something else, something we haven't uncovered yet." I wrapped my arms around myself, the hotel lobby suddenly feeling too open, too exposed. People moved around us carrying luggage, laughing about vacation plans, completely oblivious to the war unfolding in my hands. "What if he's right?" I whispered. "What if digging into this ruins everything Grandpa wanted for me?" Noah gripped my shoulders, steady and firm. "Ava, your grandfather wanted you protected. If there's something else, the only way to honor him is to uncover it. They're counting on your fear to keep you silent." I folded the letter back into its envelope, sliding it into my purse as if it were radioactive. Each step toward the car felt heavier than the last. The air smelled of salt and asphalt, ordinary and cruel, as though the world refused to acknowledge what had just detonated inside me. As Noah drove, I stared out the window, the words replaying in my head. "You'll destroy his legacy." For years, I'd let them define what family meant. Now, I had to decide if I would let them define legacy too. And deep down, I knew. Whatever secret they were hiding, I was going to find it. Even if it shattered everything I thought I knew about the people who were supposed to love me. The office smelled of leather and old paper, a place where truth seemed to gather dust until someone brave enough came to uncover it. Noah sat beside me, his hand clasped around mine, while a silver-haired man in a dark suit adjusted his glasses and studied the folder on his desk. "Mrs. Bennett," he said, his voice deep but gentle. "I'm Arthur Hale. I represented your grandfather for nearly 3 decades. He spoke of you often." Hearing that nearly broke me. For 2 years since Grandpa Walter's death, I had lived under the assumption that whatever he left behind had slipped into the hands of my parents. They never told me otherwise, and I never questioned it. But Arthur's eyes, sharp, steady, told me something different. He opened the folder, spreading documents across the desk like cards in a game I hadn't known I was playing. "Your grandfather established a trust," he explained. "Its terms were simple. Upon your 25th birthday, or on the day of your marriage, whichever came first, all assets were to transfer directly to you." My mouth went dry. "But I'm 26, I whispered. Arthur nodded slowly. "Yes. Legally, this transfer should have occurred last February." The room tilted. Twist 4 slammed into me like a blow. My parents had known. For more than a year, they had been sitting on this knowledge, deliberately keeping me in the dark while they siphoned away what was mine. Noah leaned forward. Are you saying Dennis and Carol concealed the will? That they've been illegally managing assets that belong to Ava? Arthur steepled his fingers. That is precisely what I'm saying. Their role was temporary. They were meant to manage the estate only until the conditions were met. Once Ava turned 25, their obligation was to transfer everything. They did not. That is fraud, as well as breach of fiduciary duty. My chest tightened until I could barely breathe. Images of my father's blocky handwriting on that letter from the hotel flashed through my mind. Don't ruin your grandfather's legacy. He hadn't been protecting Grandpa's legacy. He had been protecting himself. Arthur slid a sealed envelope toward me. My name sprawled across the front in my grandfather's shaky script. I recognized it instantly. He always wrote like he was carving each letter into permanence. Hands trembling, I broke the seal and unfolded the letter. My dearest Ava, if you are reading this, it means I am gone, and you have reached a milestone in your life, either your 25th birthday or your wedding day. I wanted to be there, but life rarely allows us to choose our endings. What I could choose was how to protect you. You will be told lies, my girl. You have been told them your whole life. They will say they love you while they take from you. They will say you are too dramatic, too selfish, too much, in order to convince you that less is all you deserve. Do not believe them. Everything I built for you. Not for Paige, not for your parents, not for anyone else. For you. Because you are the one who shows up. You are the one who loves without asking what it costs. You are the one who will not squander it. Please don't let them dim your light any longer. Take what is yours. And when the weight feels too heavy, remember this. I already believed you were enough. Always. Grandpa Walter. Tears blurred the words as I clutched the letter to my chest. For so long, I had been convinced that maybe I was the problem, that maybe my family's distance was proof of some flaw in me. But here, in my grandfather's own handwriting, was confirmation of something I had never dared to hope. He had seen me. He had chosen me. Arthur's voice cut gently through my grief. Mr. Reed left you considerable assets, investments, properties, and accounts. I will walk you through each. But the key fact is this. You were supposed to have control more than a year ago. Your parents' concealment is both unethical and criminal. Noah squeezed my hand until I thought our bones might fuse. We're going to fight this, he said fiercely. We're going to make it right. I swallowed hard, folding the letter back into its envelope. My grandfather's words echoed in my head. They will say you are too much. Don't let them dim your light. For the first time, I realized the truth wasn't a burden. It was armor, and I intended to wear it. Arthur Hale wasted no time. By the end of the meeting, he had drafted and filed an emergency injunction to freeze all accounts tied to the estate. This will stop further withdrawals, he explained, sliding the paperwork across the polished desk for my signature. From this moment forward, no one can touch a dime without your authorization. The act of signing my name should have felt empowering, but my hands shook. Each loop of ink was both a shield and a blade, protection for me, but also a declaration of war against the people who had raised me. News traveled fast. By the next morning, whispers turned into outright chatter. My phone lit up with posts and screenshots from acquaintances and neighbors. My family had launched a counterattack, one crafted with the same precision they had used to erase me from their photos. On Facebook, my mother posted a photo of herself and my father holding hands, captioned, "Pray for us. Our daughter has chosen money over family. It breaks our hearts." Paige followed with a tearful TikTok, her eyeliner smudged just enough to look authentic. "My sister is trying to destroy us. She doesn't understand how hard life has been for Mom and Dad. She wants everything for herself." The comments section split like a battlefield. Some rallied behind them, praising their courage. Others, however, saw through it. "Didn't you all go on a cruise the same weekend as her wedding?" one person asked. "How does that add up?" Noah sat next to me on the couch, scrolling through the chaos, his jaw clenched tight. "They're painting you as a villain," he said. I exhaled slowly. "They always have. This time, they just have a bigger stage." And then, unexpectedly, the narrative shifted. Late one evening, as I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop glowing in the dim light, a video popped up in my feed. The title caught my eye: The Truth About the Morgans. The speaker was Marcus, Paige's ex-boyfriend. I hadn't seen him in years. In the video, Marcus spoke directly to the camera, his voice steady. "I dated Paige for 3 years. I spent holidays with that family. And I want you to know something about Ava. They treated her like a ghost. I saw her cook entire Thanksgiving dinners alone, only to be told later there wasn't enough space at the table for her. I saw them use her car without asking, return it empty, then laugh about it. I even saw them cash her birthday checks from relatives and tell her the relatives must have forgotten. Ava has been erased by them for years. This," he gestured toward screenshots of the cruise photos, "isn't new. It's just the first time the rest of you are seeing it." The video spread like wildfire. Comments poured in. "This explains everything. We knew something was off. She deserved better." Within 48 hours, the sympathy tide turned. For once, I wasn't alone in the courtroom of public opinion. Twist 5 hit me harder than I expected, not because it hurt, but because it healed something. Someone outside of me had finally said it out loud. I hadn't imagined it. I hadn't been too sensitive. I had been excluded, deliberately, for years. Still, the relief didn't erase the gnawing question Arthur had planted earlier that week. What would I do about the house? The Morgan home wasn't just wood and brick. It was the stage of every abandonment I had endured. The place where I ate birthday cake alone, where Paige was praised while I was dismissed, where my mother cleaned already clean counters rather than look me in the eye. It was also the house Grandpa had left to me. Arthur laid it out plainly. "You can evict them, Ava. Legally, the property is yours. They've been living there unlawfully for over a year." The thought made my stomach churn. To file the paperwork would be to put my parents, my own flesh and blood, out on the street. And yet, hadn't they already done worse to me? They had stolen not just money, but years of my dignity. I stared at the stack of documents Arthur had prepared. Noah touched my hand gently, his eyes searching mine. "You don't have to decide today, but you do need to decide. That house is either your prison or your proof of freedom." The dilemma hollowed me out. To claim it felt cruel. To leave it felt weak. And in the echo of Grandpa's letter, "Don't let them dim your light," I knew this was the crossroads he had tried to prepare me for. For the first time, the question wasn't whether my family would show up for me. It was whether I would show up for myself. The first call from their attorney came on a Wednesday morning. I was pouring coffee in our small apartment kitchen when the phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. On speaker, his voice was oily and rehearsed. "Mrs. Bennett, my clients, your parents, are prepared to resolve this matter without dragging things further. They're offering to transfer the deed of the Morgan home back into your name immediately, on the condition that you agree not to pursue criminal charges related to the trust and estate funds." For a moment, the words hung in the air like a mirage. The house. The very place they had insisted wasn't mine. Now they were willing to hand it over, if I agreed to silence. Noah shook his head instantly, his hand tightening around mine. "That's not a settlement," he said firmly. "That's blackmail." I swallowed hard. A part of me wanted to say yes, to make it all stop, to take the house and pretend the rest had never happened. But then I remembered Grandpa's letter, his warning. "They will tell you lies. Don't let them dim your light." "I refuse," I said, my voice steady even though my insides trembled. "This isn't about property. It's about truth, and I won't trade truth for silence." The lawyer's tone chilled. "Then we'll see you in court." When the line clicked dead, I pressed my hands flat against the table, forcing myself to breathe. Noah kissed my temple. "You did the right thing," he murmured. But the battle was just beginning. By Sunday, my mother had taken her campaign to familiar territory, the church pews where she had built her image as a long-suffering, selfless woman. During the prayer circle, she stood, tears streaming down her face. "Please," she implored, voice breaking just enough to seem fragile. "Pray for my daughter, Ava. She's lost her way. She's letting money poison her heart. She's trying to destroy us." Gasps rippled through the congregation. Murmurs swelled. For years, those pews had been my mother's stage, her confessional booth where she spun stories that cast her as victim and me as ungrateful child. I imagined heads shaking, sympathetic hands patting her back, affirming what she had always wanted them to believe, that Carol Morgan was a martyr, and I was the cross she bore. But this time, something shifted. At the back of the sanctuary, Patricia rose. Noah's mother wasn't a woman who sought the spotlight. She had the quiet strength of someone who believed truth didn't need a microphone to be heard. Yet on that day, she walked down the aisle of the church with measured steps, her voice clear. "With respect, Carol," she said, facing my mother, "I can't let you twist this. Ava isn't destroying her family. Her family destroyed her. She is my daughter now, and she deserves the truth. She deserves the inheritance her grandfather left her. And she deserves better than to be slandered in God's house." The room fell silent. My mother's face blanched, lips parting in shock. For the first time in my life, someone stood up for me publicly. Not a teacher in whispers, not a friend in secret, but a mother figure declaring I was worthy in front of everyone. Tears pricked my eyes as Patricia returned to her seat, the murmurs now carrying a different tone. Skepticism. Doubt. Maybe, finally, people were beginning to question the narrative my family had spun for so long. Later, when Patricia hugged me in the church parking lot, her voice was soft but steady. "You don't stand alone anymore, Ava. You have us. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." Her words settled into me like roots, anchoring me against the storm. I had spent 36 years craving the defense of a parent, and at last I felt it. Not from the ones who had raised me, but from the woman who had chosen me. Driving home, Noah reached over, threading his fingers through mine. "How does it feel?" he asked. I smiled through tears. "Like I finally have a family that shows up." It was past midnight when the pounding started. At first, I thought it was a drunken neighbor fumbling for the wrong door, but then came the scraping sound, the metallic rasp of something sliding against the lock. Noah sat up instantly, eyes narrowing, while I froze, my heart hammering against my ribs. The doorbell camera pinged my phone, and when I opened the feed, bile rose in my throat. My father, Dennis, swayed in the glow of the porch light, his tie crooked, his eyes glassy with alcohol. In his hands was a credit card jammed against our lock as he cursed under his breath. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." Noah grabbed the phone and dialed 911 without hesitation. "This is Noah Bennett," he said, voice calm but urgent. "We live at 22nd Street, apartment 3B. My wife's father is attempting to break in. He's intoxicated. We have it on camera." Within minutes, red and blue lights painted the walls of our living room. Through the window, I watched officers wrestle Dennis back as he shouted incoherently. My mother's voice carried down the hall, shrill with desperation. "She's my daughter. She can't do this to us." Paige was there too, filming everything on her phone, her expression unreadable behind the harsh glow of the screen. The officers approached me inside. "Do you want to press charges?" one asked, holding a clipboard. His tone was matter of fact, but his eyes were kind, as if he already knew the war raging inside me. For 36 years, I had been told family loyalty meant silence. That forgiveness was duty, that tolerance was love. But standing there in my own living room, the smell of alcohol still lingering from my father's attempt, I realized silence had only ever protected them, never me. "Yes," I said, my voice shaking but resolute. "I want to press charges." The officer nodded, scribbling notes. "We'll file this as attempted breaking and entering, plus violation of the temporary injunction." When they escorted Dennis down the hall, he twisted in their grip just long enough to sneer at me. "Ungrateful girl, after everything we gave you." I followed them into the corridor, my knees trembling but my spine steel. For once, I didn't shrink back. I met his bloodshot eyes head on. "You're right," I said, my voice steady and louder than I expected. "You gave me life, but you never once chose me. Not then. Not now." The words echoed down the hallway. For the first time, it was my truth, not theirs, that filled the silence. Carol lunged toward me, her face blotchy, tears smearing her mascara. "How can you do this to your own father?" she screamed, clawing at the air as if she could pull me back into submission. Noah stepped in front of me, his shoulders broad, his presence immovable. How can you do this to your own daughter?" he shot back. The officers pushed Carol aside, warning her to stay back. I stood there barefoot in my own hallway, wrapped in Noah's steadiness, watching as the people who had defined me for so long were finally being forced to face consequences. The fight was no longer just whispers and stolen money. It was on record now. Official, criminal. As the squad car doors slammed shut, the night air rushed in, cool and sharp. Neighbors peeked from behind cracked doors, murmuring, watching the once respected Morgans being driven away in handcuffs and chaos. Noah slipped an arm around me. "You okay?" I shook my head. "No, but I'm done pretending I am." He kissed my hair, and for the first time in weeks, I let myself breathe. The war had escalated, yes, but in that escalation, something had broken open. I wasn't just the daughter they abandoned anymore. I was the woman who had drawn a line. The courthouse smelled faintly of coffee and polished wood, an odd blend of ordinary and monumental. My palms were damp as I clutched Noah's hand, walking past rows of strangers who had come to witness what was now being treated not as family drama, but as a legal reckoning. Arthur Hale stood tall at the front, his files stacked in neat towers like weapons of war. Across the aisle, my parents sat with their attorney, an aging man who shuffled papers without meeting anyone's eyes. Paige was beside them, her expression carefully curated for pity, head tilted just enough to play the part of the supportive daughter. When the judge called the case, Arthur began without hesitation. "Your Honor, what we have here is not a misunderstanding between family members. It is systemic financial abuse. The deceased Mr. Walter Reed created a trust for his granddaughter Ava Morgan, now Ava Bennett. That trust was to transfer upon her 25th birthday or her wedding day. Instead, her parents withheld it for over a year, siphoning funds for personal gain." He laid out the evidence: bank statements, transfer slips, and notarized copies of the will. One by one, the numbers appeared on the overhead projector, glowing stark against the courtroom wall. Withdrawals totaling $8,000 for a Caribbean cruise, $5,000 coinciding with the purchase of a new vehicle for Ms. Paige Morgan, $3,500 spent on home renovations, numerous smaller transactions, all unauthorized. In total, Your Honor, more than $380,000 has been misappropriated from Ms. Bennett's inheritance. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Even I, who had seen the statements before, felt my chest cave in as the sum was spoken aloud. $380,000. Years of my grandfather's careful saving funneled away under the guise of parental stewardship. I looked at my father. His face was pale, jaw clenched, as if holding back words he no longer controlled. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, shaking her head at the judge as though she were the one wronged. Paige, of course, leaned into the performance, resting a hand on Mom's shoulder for the cameras. My throat tightened. For all the evidence, for all the gasps, a single poisonous question burrowed deep. Was I betraying them by dragging this into the open? Did standing here make me the disloyal daughter they always claimed I was? Noah sensed it instantly. His thumb brushed over my knuckles, grounding me. When the judge called a recess, he pulled me aside into the hallway. "Talk to me," he said softly. I shook my head, my voice barely a whisper. What if they're right? What if I'm making this worse? What if fighting for what's mine just proves I care more about money than family? Noah's eyes locked onto mine, fierce and unwavering. "Ava, look at me. You are not betraying them. They betrayed you, over and over again. This isn't you tearing the family apart. This is you refusing to let them keep tearing you apart." Tears threatened, but his words pressed into me like balm. He cupped my face, steady. "You're not the villain here. You're the victim who finally said enough." I swallowed hard, my body trembling with the weight of both truth and fear. "It feels like I'm standing on a cliff," I admitted. "If I jump, there's no going back." "Then jump," Noah whispered, "because I'll be there to catch you." When court resumed, Arthur continued his relentless presentation. He produced receipts, testimonies from Deborah and others, even screenshots of the cruise photos my family had so carelessly posted. Each piece built a wall of truth too tall for excuses to climb. By the end of the day, the judge announced that the freeze on assets would remain in place until full accounting was completed. My parents left the courtroom without looking at me, their lawyer fumbling to gather his scattered papers. I sat back down, chest hollow but lighter somehow. The battle was far from over, but Noah's words replayed in my mind, steady as a heartbeat. You're not betraying them. You're just refusing to be betrayed anymore. For the first time, I started to believe him. A week after the hearing, Arthur called to inform me the court had granted access for a full inventory of the Morgan home. It's necessary, he said. We need a record of every asset tied to the estate. You'll want to be there. Walking through that house again felt like stepping into a mausoleum of my own childhood. The walls smelled faintly of lemon cleaner, the kind my mother always used, scrubbing already spotless counters as if cleanliness could conceal emptiness. Paige's laughter seemed to echo in the halls, even though she wasn't there, just a phantom of favoritism lingering in the corners. Room by room, the court officer catalogued furniture, jewelry, and art. I trailed behind, numb, until we reached the attic. Dust hung heavy in the air, shafts of light cutting across boxes stacked in haphazard towers. Something in me knew before I touched it. My past was waiting in those cardboard walls. I pried open the first box and gasped. Inside were my old report cards, yellowed art projects, even the diary I'd thought I lost in middle school. For a fleeting second, warmth flickered, proof that maybe my childhood hadn't been erased after all. But as I dug deeper, the flicker turned to ash. There were photo albums, dozens of them, their leather covers cracked with age. I opened one, bracing myself for nostalgia, only to feel my stomach plummet. Picture after picture had been mutilated. In family portraits, my face was cut clean out, leaving jagged holes between smiling bodies. At Christmas, the tree glittered, but the space where I had once stood was a void. At birthdays, Paige beamed over cakes, my own image sliced away as if I had never existed. No! My voice cracked. They cut me out. Noah knelt beside me, eyes wide with horror as he lifted a page. Ava, this wasn't an accident. Look, it's systematic. Every photo you were in, they removed you. Twist 7 landed like a blade to the chest. It wasn't just about money. It wasn't just about absence. They had been rewriting history, piece by piece, trying to erase me not only from the present, but from the family's memory. I stumbled back, clutching one of the albums to my chest, my tears hot and unrelenting. They didn't just not love me, I whispered. They wanted proof that I never existed. Noah pulled me into his arms, his voice fierce. No, they can cut photos, but they can't cut truth. They can't erase who you are. But the weight of it pressed down like cement. For years, I had believed my family's narrative, that I was dramatic, selfish, difficult. Yet here was physical evidence that they had invested energy into removing me, that it hadn't been neglect. It had been effort. The realization broke something open. If they had worked this hard to hate me, then why was I still working so hard to earn their love? I pressed a trembling hand against my chest, where Grandpa's letter still burned in memory. Don't let them dim your light. Slowly the tears dried. Pain remained, but beneath it was clarity, sharp and undeniable. If they had chosen to carve me out of their story, then I had the right, the duty, to carve out my own. Standing in that attic, surrounded by mutilated albums and lost childhood treasures, I felt the strangest kind of freedom. For the first time, the shame was no longer mine to carry. It belonged to them. I closed the album carefully, set it aside, and met Noah's gaze. My voice was hoarse but certain. If they can try this hard to erase me, then I can try just as hard to love myself, to build something new. He kissed my forehead. Then let's start today. The officer called from downstairs, noting the last of the inventory. I took one last look at the gutted photos, the ghosts of a family that had never truly claimed me, and whispered a silent goodbye. The invitation I sent was simple, almost bare. No flourishes, no pleading words, just a date, a time, and a place. The Morgan backyard. The same yard my mother once declared too messy for my wedding reception, the excuse she used to deny me even that sliver of belonging. This time, I was the host. This time, I set the rules. When Saturday came, folding chairs dotted the lawn, arranged neatly around the old oak tree. The autumn air carried a crisp bite, leaves spiraling down like embers from a fire long burned out. One by one, relatives arrived, aunts with pursed lips, uncles with guarded eyes, cousins whispering behind their hands. They came because curiosity outweighed loyalty, because drama promised more entertainment than truth. My parents and Paige were not invited. Their absence was intentional, a silence more powerful than any speech I could give. This gathering wasn't for reconciliation. It was for revelation. I stood before them with a stack of documents in my hand, Noah at my side like an anchor. Arthur had helped me prepare everything. Copies of the will, transaction records, screenshots of cruise photos, receipts in every sense of the word. "Thank you for coming," I began, my voice carrying across the yard. "I called you here not to beg for understanding, but to show you the truth. For years, I've been told I was dramatic, ungrateful, wrong. Today, I'll let the evidence speak." I laid the diurnal horrors bare. The trust my grandfather established, the terms that named me sole heir at 25, the balance that had been drained to pay for vacations and cars. Gasps rippled through the crowd as I pointed to the figures highlighted in bold. "This," I said, holding up a copy of the cruise photos, "was taken at 4 p.m. on the day of my wedding. The same moment 3 empty chairs sat in the front row with their names on them." Whispers erupted, some sharp with disbelief, others thick with guilt. An aunt shook her head, muttering, "We didn't know." I cut her off gently but firmly. "You did. Maybe not the numbers, maybe not the legal terms, but you knew enough. You saw me excluded, you saw me erased, and you stayed silent." Uncle Pete, his arms crossed defensively, interjected, "Families fight. That doesn't mean you drag everyone into court." I held his gaze, unflinching. Families show up. Families don't steal. Families don't celebrate on a ship while their daughter says, "I do alone." Don't confuse relatives with family. They are not the same. The words settled over the gathering like a gavel strike. For once, I wasn't begging to be heard. I was declaring. Some shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting to the ground. Others tried to speak, but I didn't let them twist the narrative this time. "I've spent 36 years trying to earn a place in this family," I continued. "But a place earned through silence isn't family, it's servitude, and I am done." Noah squeezed my hand, steadying me as the murmurs swelled and died. For the first time in my life, I wasn't performing for their approval. I was testifying to the truth of my own worth. I looked around the yard, the same yard where laughter had echoed for every cousin's birthday but mine, where barbecue smoke had curled over summers I was rarely invited to enjoy. And now, in this space, I reclaimed my voice. "Relatives are connected by blood," I said, lifting my chin. "But family is chosen every day, by showing up. And you've already shown me who you are." Silence followed, heavy and unbroken. In that stillness, I felt lighter than I had in years. The chains of obligation, of pretending, of begging, they loosened link by link. For once, I wasn't the girl waiting at the window for headlights that never came. I was the woman standing in her own backyard, drawing a line no one could cross again. The murmurs had barely died down when I reached into the folder at my side and pulled out a neat stack of envelopes. My pulse thudded, but my voice stayed steady as I handed the first one to Uncle Pete. "These are cease and desist orders," I said. "Each of you will receive one. If you attempt to harass, contact, or slander me again, my lawyer will pursue charges. Consider this your notice. I am done playing the silent daughter." A hush fell over the backyard. Shocked eyes darted between one another as I moved down the row, passing the envelopes into reluctant hands. Some looked indignant, others embarrassed, but none dared refuse. "For years I begged for a seat at the table," I continued. "Now I am protecting the table I'm building for myself, one where loyalty is proven by action, not bloodlines." It was then I felt a tug at my sleeve. I turned to find Mia, my 17-year-old cousin, standing there, her brown eyes wide but determined. She clutched her envelope but didn't open it. "Ava," she whispered, her voice low so the others couldn't hear. "I'm glad you did this." I blinked. "You are?" She nodded quickly, her words tumbling out in a rush. "They always talk about you when you're not there. At Christmas, at birthdays, even at church. They say you're too emotional, too dramatic, that you always make things about yourself. They laugh about you being left out. But I see it, Ava. I've seen how they treat you, and it isn't fair. I don't want to be like them. Twist 8 hit me like a spark in the darkness. For so long I had felt like the sole outcast, the scapegoat. And here was Mia, quietly watching, quietly hurting, quietly waiting for someone to prove that leaving was possible. My throat tightened, but I opened my arms. She stepped into them without hesitation, clinging to me with the fierce relief of someone who had finally found safe harbor. "You don't have to be like them," I murmured against her hair. "You get to choose. When you turn 18, if you want out, I'll be here. You'll always have a place with me." Tears glistened in her eyes as she pulled back, nodding. For the first time in years, I felt a thread of hope weaving itself into the ruins of what had been. Maybe the cycle could break. Maybe I wasn't as alone as I thought. The rest of the relatives trickled out, some silent, some muttering protests under their breath. By the time the yard emptied, only the wind stirred the fallen leaves. I looked around the space, the house looming behind me. Once, it had been a monument to absence. Now, it was simply a building, 4 walls that had sheltered more lies than love. Within 2 weeks, the house was sold. The offer came swiftly, cash above asking price, from a young couple with 3 children and a dog. I signed the papers with a strange sense of relief, as though exhaling a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying. On the final day, I stood in the driveway one last time. Through the windows, I saw the family moving in, boxes stacked high, children chasing each other through the halls, laughter spilling out into the yard. For the first time, the house looked alive. It looked like a home. I smiled faintly, the ache in my chest easing. My childhood home had never truly been one for me, but watching it now, I realized that maybe its purpose wasn't lost. It was simply delayed. This family would give it what mine never did: love, belonging, warmth. And as I turned to leave, Noah's arm around me, I whispered a quiet promise to myself. My story doesn't end with the family that cut me out. It begins with the one I choose. The courthouse was quieter this time, almost intimate. No judge presiding, no lawyers circling like hawks, just Noah, me, and 2 witnesses, Patricia and Tom Bennett. Instead of a gown, I wore a simple blue dress. Noah had on a crisp shirt with sleeves rolled up, the kind of ease that came from a man who had nothing to prove and everything to give. We weren't here to fight. We were here to renew. The vow renewal had been Noah's idea. The first time, he'd told me, we said "I do" with empty chairs in the room. I want to say it again, this time surrounded only by the people who actually showed up. So we stood before the clerk, hands intertwined, and spoke words not polished by tradition but shaped by truth. Noah promised to keep choosing me, not because vows demanded it, but because love made it impossible not to. I promised to believe in the family we were building, even on days when the shadows of my past tried to creep in. When the ceremony ended, Patricia hugged me so tightly I could feel her heart against mine. "Now," she whispered, "you know you're truly our daughter." Later that evening, we gathered in the Bennett's dining room. The long oak table was set with mismatched plates and lit by the soft glow of candles. Patricia had cooked roast chicken and baked bread from scratch, the smell filling every corner of the house. Noah's sisters brought dessert, their laughter already spilling into the room before they even set the pies down. As I slid into my seat, I caught sight of the table, every chair filled, every space occupied. No ribbons marking absence, no empty places screaming rejection. For the first time, I looked around a table and felt whole. Before we ate, Patricia handed me a small box wrapped in brown paper. "This came from Arthur Hale," she explained. "He said your grandfather wanted you to have it on a day when you were truly happy." My fingers trembled as I unwrapped it. Inside was a single envelope, my name scrawled in Grandpa Walter's familiar script. Across the top, he had written, "Open when you're happy." Tears already blurred my vision as I unfolded the letter. "My Ava, if you're reading this, it means you made it. You found joy, not borrowed, not begged for, but built. I need you to know something. Choosing yourself is not selfish. It never was. And taking back what was stolen from you is not greed. It is justice. I knew your parents would try to dim your light. I feared they might convince you to doubt yourself, but I also knew this. The moment you chose your own happiness, you would finally be free. I don't care about the money. I don't care about the house. What mattered to me was that you never again beg for a chair at someone else's table. Build your own. Fill it with people who see you, who choose you, and remember this always. I already believed you were enough. I still do. Grandpa Walter. The words wrapped around me like a blanket I'd been cold without for years. My tears spilled freely, but for once, they weren't born of grief. They were born of gratitude, of release, of the quiet joy that comes when someone you love tells you they always knew you were worthy. I folded the letter carefully, setting it beside my plate. Noah reached for my hand under the table, his eyes soft but certain. Dinner began. Plates passed, bread torn and shared. Laughter rose and fell like music, weaving itself into the air until it felt thick with belonging. I looked around the table, Patricia at the head, Tom cracking jokes, Noah's sisters teasing each other, Noah gazing at me with unguarded love, and I realized this was what Grandpa had meant. The table was full, every seat claimed, not by blood, but by choice. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like something was missing. 2 years passed like the steady rhythm of waves reshaping a shoreline. Life was not perfect, but it was ours, built on choices made with clear eyes and open hearts. And then came Grace. The day she was born, the hospital room filled with the scent of antiseptic and the sound of her first cry, a thin wail that pierced me to my bones and remade me entirely. Noah held her with reverence, his smile wet with tears. "She's perfect," he whispered, and for once, I didn't doubt it. For once, I didn't doubt anything. We named her Grace, after my grandfather's mother, a woman I'd never met but whose story Grandpa had once told me, a woman who chose herself when no one else did, who carved a life of dignity despite rejection. Now her name belonged to a new beginning, swaddled in a pink blanket. But of course, not everyone saw her that way. 2 weeks after we brought Grace home, an envelope arrived. My mother's handwriting scrawled across the front in familiar loops. Inside was a card decorated with pastel rattles and baby shoes. The word Grandma was underlined, bold, as if claiming a title she had forfeited years ago. I didn't open it. I slid it back into a new envelope and mailed it straight back, unopened. Whatever claim she thought she had was gone. Grace would never learn family from people who had only ever taught me absence. Months later, Paige reached out through a lawyer's letter. She was getting married and wanted financial help. "Family helps family," the note read. I laughed bitterly at the phrase, then wrote a check for $50. In the memo line, I scribbled, "The exact amount you contributed to my wedding." I mailed it without hesitation. The check was never cashed. Life went on. Grace grew, filling our home with giggles, cries, and the tiny patter of feet against hardwood floors. Noah and I fell into the rhythm of exhausted joy, trading midnight shifts, celebrating first smiles, recording shaky videos of first steps. At night, when the house was quiet, I sometimes thought of the empty chairs from my wedding, of the hollow spaces they represented. But the ache was softer now, dulled by the chorus of voices that had since filled my life. One bright spring afternoon, Noah and I drove past my old neighborhood. Grace dozed in her car seat, her tiny fist curled against her cheek. As we turned the corner, the Morgan house came into view, or what used to be the Morgan house. It was painted a cheerful yellow now, with white shutters and flower boxes overflowing with petunias. A swing set stood proudly in the backyard, and the sound of children's laughter carried across the street. Bicycles lay scattered on the lawn, their wheels spinning lazily in the breeze. I slowed the car, my heart catching. Once, that house had been a monument to everything I lacked. Now, it was alive with the very things I'd longed for: joy, noise, belonging. Twist 9 settled into me not like a knife, but like a revelation. The empty chairs at my wedding had not remained empty. They had been replaced, not by my parents, not by Paige, but by people who truly showed up, by Noah, by Patricia, By the family we chose and the daughter we created, by every chair at our table now filled with laughter instead of silence. Grace stirred in her sleep, her lips twitching into the faintest smile. I reached back and touched her tiny hand, then looked at Noah. He was watching me, understanding in his eyes. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded, a slow smile spreading across my face. "More than okay." As we drove away, sunlight streaming through the windshield, I held on to the truth I had learned the hard way. Family isn't blood. Family isn't obligation. Family is the people who show up, and this time every seat in my life was finally filled.